everyone, welcome to The Breakdown. I'm your host, Brandi Christensen, and we're going to be breaking down some stigma to mental health and addiction today. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to The Breakdown. I'm your host, Brandi Christensen, President and CEO of Mental Health America Wabash Valley Region, and I'm here today with my guest, a friend and a colleague, Jason McManus, President and CEO of Wabash Center, a large non-for-profit organization serving right here in Lafayette, Indiana, serving adults with intellectual disabilities. He's facilitated tremendous growth in these programs. We were connected early in my tenure here in Lafayette when I first came here. Jason is actively involved in nonprofit and disability sectors. He serves on multiple boards and committees. He's got a background in the juvenile justice system, a wonderful family, originally from Portland, Oregon. And, other than being a Chicago Bears fan, he is probably one of the coolest people that I know in this town. So without further ado, I'd like to bring onto the breakdown, our third podcast here, Vodcast, Jason McManus. Jason, how you doing?
Hey, Brandi, thanks so much for the warm welcome. I'm doing great.
I really had to pare that down. For those of you that don't know, Jason has about a 3-page bio, and we actually had a full team of people drill down to a very succinct introduction because he is so cool. He's involved in so many things. And, we work together here in Lafayette. So, Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role, what a day in the life of being a CEO in your organization looks like?
Sure. First of all, sorry for the long bio. You had that was a really nice way of saying I'm too wordy. So I appreciate that. It was a very gentle feedback. Thank you. A little bit about me. I grew up in a household with a person with a developmental disability. So that's always at the forefront. It's a foundation of my life experiences. And that's really what drew me into doing this work. And as a result of that, I say this with genuine sincerity. I don't feel like I'm getting up and going to work every day. I really do feel like I am getting up and doing what I was called to do. And that's pretty, I know that that's a pretty special thing, and I'm very grateful for that. Day in the life at Wabash Center, no 2 days are the same. Our continuum of care really begins all the way at early intervention and diagnosis for young kids newly diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and that's kids as young as 4, all the way through older adults nearing the end of their lives, and just about everything in between. For the most part, we're a 24/7 operation, which has its own challenges, and it makes the work a little difficult, but I'm very grateful to be in this role. And I love the population that we serve, and I'm really passionate about them.
And I know that's how we bonded. Jason knows that my first professional job was working in the same sector. So once you do that, you have an appreciation really that can't be matched. And so it's led to a lot of great conversations and hopefully a lot of future collaborations. But one of the things that Jason and I have talked about, you and I have talked about, are the great people that are on the front lines actually caring for our friends. It's a very unique job. It has a lot of challenges, but I think that the average person doesn't really understand what a direct support professional is and what their role is in community-based, working with the folks that we're serving. So can you describe for our viewers what those DSPs, direct support professionals, are doing in your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. My first job in this field, likewise, was as a DSP, working in a group home for young adults who had intellectual and developmental disabilities and extreme sexually maladaptive behaviors. So that was my first kind of introduction into the industry, aside from my own personal lived experience. And it was definitely eye-opening. And it's an experience that I carry with me even today as we're talking about the important role that DSPs play. So these are individuals who have a lot of responsibilities on their plate. On one hand, their primary function is to make sure that the health, well-being, and safety of the individual is paramount. And that can mean something as granular as, I'm working with this individual for the next 8 hours, and because of their intellectual challenges or behavioral challenges, I need to be within line of sight of them at all times, no matter where they are. And then the other major responsibility that they carry is to help these individuals that we're supporting and serving be as independent as possible. So it's almost a dual, you're caretaking on one hand, but then you're also trying to foster independence, and there can be a little bit of dissonance there. But these are folks who are working in homes alongside individuals with disabilities. They could be working out in the community, and they could be doing anything from providing transportation and emotional and social support to for some of our older adults who toileting is still an issue. They might be in the bathroom with somebody, helping them take a shower or helping them go to the bathroom and get cleaned up afterwards. I think I mentioned no 2 days are really the same in this organization. And for a DSP, no 2 days are really the same. And then I think germane to our conversation is, on top of that, depending on who they might be working with, they could be working with an individual who has significant behavioral challenges. And those behavioral challenges could manifest themselves in verbal, physical aggression, sexually maladaptive behavior, elopement or running away, self-harm, very, very heavy and weighty things for anybody to deal with. But some of our DSPs experience that multiple times throughout the day, where they're doing active behavioral interventions, they're trying to redirect, and they're trying to keep people safe. And so that's very challenging. It's a very hard job. I say this again with all sincerity. Being a DSP at Wabash Center is much more challenging than being the CEO at Wabash Center. They really are on the front lines doing the good work every day in support of the folks that we're serving.
And that is a lot. It runs the gamut. And as you said, it can include some really serious, heavy stuff, some physical exertion. What, for anyone who might be interested in getting into this kind of field, because there are a lot of rewards that go along with it, and we know that because the people that are still doing it, and some of them are just so amazing. They get something out of it. It's not just all hardship. Watching the careers of some of the really, really good DSPs that I have. If someone was interested into kind of getting into this type of career, what are the qualifications that you would look for getting someone through the door and through the process?
Yeah, that's a great question on great points. There are so many things that are rewarding about doing the work. Primarily, you get to see people make progress, and you get to be a part of somebody making progress, especially towards independence and living in a more self-sufficient way, which is the end goal of all of our programs here. And they form very close bonds and friendships, some of those that last a lifetime, and some of those that last well beyond, someone's time here at Wabash Center. We have plenty of folks who have been DSPs before that have moved on to other careers, but they still act as guardians for some of our folks just because of those relationships. But really, if someone's interested in this field, the qualifications are pretty minimal. You have to have a high school diploma or equivalent, and you have to be able to pass a criminal background check. What we look for qualified candidates is, we have a great Best Buddies program that's offered through Purdue here in our local community. And so any experiences where someone has had some close contact with persons with disabilities, and so that we're not having to do a ton of education about the stigmas and some of the other things that come with having a developmental disability, that's always helpful. And then previous experience helps too, especially lived experience. We have a lot of folks who act as DSPs for their own family members just because they qualify for service and your family knows you best. And so those are the types of things that we look for. Again, the minimum qualifications are relatively minimal. That's redundant, but I hope I answered that for you.
Yeah, you did. And the reason that I threw that one in, because I know it wasn't on the list of questions that I was going to give you. The reason I threw that in is because, we talked about the enormity of the expectations for someone filling that role, and it's all over the place. And you're practicing a little bit of a lot. And so I wanted, it kind of is a segue to my next question. Being as we're asking people to really stand in and provide all of these supports to these individuals, and we don't require a ton of education, we don't require a ton of experience. There are a lot of challenges that DSPs can face, both internally and externally, in providing these services. And I wanted to bring that up because it's going to really tie everything to get together regarding what we're trying to do together. So someone may bring in some baggage, right? And it's really hard to parcel that out. So you have experienced it both as a DSP and now as a CEO. What are some of the most significant challenges that you see DSPs facing in performing their job duties?
Yeah. So I think the ones that are internal to the organization, first of all, as far as preparation for the role, we spend 2 full weeks after someone is hired to be a DSP to provide them as much real life experiential training as possible. So the internal stuff, we're such a highly regulated industry in general. Most of our funding is tied to Medicaid. And as a result, literally every interaction that you have with someone has to be documented, whether or not you end up billing for it at the end of the day. And so the regulatory requirements can be very challenging. And we're always helping our DSPs balance the actual provision of service and the documentation of service, because both of those are so important. I think internally, aside from, working with individuals who might have very challenging behaviors, you're a member of a team. And sometimes that team includes people outside of the organization who have just as much at stake in care, parents and guardians, case managers, behavior support specialists. There's this whole team that wraps around the folks that we support. And oftentimes our DSPs end up being on the front line of when something challenging occurs. And they might hear that from a parent or guardian. They might hear that from their manager. So there's just a lot of internal pressures aside from just the challenges of doing the work. I think externally, Brandi, this is the part that, I will get on my soapbox about this for our folks, because, externally, they have our employees tend to have some real challenges, and I'll just tick through them if that's okay.
Please.
And I'm going to use this as a comparison to just the general population. They're more susceptible to being housing insecure or food insecure. They're way more susceptible to predatory payday lenders than the general population. They tend to have metabolic conditions or pre-diabetic conditions at a greater rate than the general population. And if you think about that in the context of the stress that you have at work, mm-hmm. that definitely plays a role in that. And in general, there's a lot of peer-reviewed literature out there pre-pandemic about the fact that persons who act as direct support professionals have a higher rate of mental health challenges than the general population. And I'm carved out that pre-pandemic caveat because, if you just look at the data pre-pandemic about the number of DSPs who experience mental health challenges at a greater rate than the general population, one can only extrapolate from that post-pandemic, that's probably much higher because of all of the external stress caused by the pandemic on our folks, including our DSPs were essential workers. And while many people could be at home because that was the right thing to do in that moment, mm-hmm. we were asking our folks, myself included, to be on the ground serving and supporting our individuals because their lives didn't stop. And so their support needs didn't either.
Yeah, and I remember quite clearly those times and those concerns, and your clients obviously, and potentially, probably based on the information you just shared, even your DSPs carried higher risks for contracting the COVID-19 virus. And it was a tough time. And of course, just like everyone else, the pandemic did not reduce our mental health stresses and conditions. So yeah,
Yeah, may I tell a quick story just to
please,
underscore and champion the work that our folks do every day?
please do.
There were a couple of times during the heart of the pandemic where we had individuals that we support living in a home together that had all contracted COVID-19. And rather than shrink from that moment, we had multiple DSPs stand up and say, I will just live in this home. I'll put my own life aside, figuratively. I'll put, my family's life aside. I'm going to go spend this next 2 weeks with these individuals and just live in the home with them to make sure that someone is there with them at all times. And those are the things that warm your heart, but also let you know just how close some of those bonds can be between these folks acting in a caregiver role and the persons that they're supporting.
Like really the integrity of the people providing the service.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, you and I, as well as everyone else in our industry, and whether they're non-for-profit business or not, have, been forced to really look at our laborers in a significantly different way. A lot of it, the impetus was the pandemic, but when you have people that are providing services to people with really intense needs, you begin to care for them as a family. You begin to see their hardiness and their resilience, and you become a champion for their wellness. And I know that we've had many discussions. How do we keep our people happy, healthy, safe? Not just so that they can continue doing the work and serving the mission, but because we have really taken their well-being into our own personal purview. We view it as a responsibility of leadership. And so I'm just using that to kind of springboard off of one of my questions here. You did reach out. You reached out to us, and I'd like for you to explain to the viewers what made you reach out specifically to us, given the conditions that we've already described.
Yeah, well, let me just start by saying, part of the rationale for reaching out to MHA Wabash Valley Region is my relationship with you. And, I think it's important to note that, we're colleagues and we work in the same community, but we've also found a way to bond in different ways around what I consider to be kind of fundamental values and principles. And one of those fundamental values and principles, because both of us have worked as direct support professionals, is just this acknowledgement that these are members of our family, and it is a leadership responsibility to take care of your workers in a way that maybe you didn't quite think about 5, 10, 15 years ago, because the times were different. And so really it was my relationship with you and our shared values and principles that led me to reach out. We'd talked about doing something like this well before we ever got to this point. And it always kind of seemed like a pipe dream, but I knew that when I was testing some theories and some hypotheses, that I could count on you for generalized support in the places where that was appropriate, and some pushback and some challenging of those ideas and theories and hypotheses. So that was really the impetus, but also knowing how much the MHA Wabash Valley Region has changed as a result of your leadership. It's always been a community treasure and always been such an important part of the community. But I think, Brandi, you stepped in at a point when the needs and demands of the community well outpaced what was available to meet those needs and demands. And rather than just accept the status quo, you're just one of those people, and I always gravitate to these kind of people. You're just one of those kind of people who's like, well, what else can we be doing to actually impact these needs? And so that made it easy. And then on top of that, we have a close relationship with Wabash Center, is a close relationship with our regulatory body in state government. And as a result of having some American Rescue Fund dollars, they were really looking to our industry to come up with some creative and innovative approaches to the entire service delivery model, including how do we best support people doing this work, and how do we make it so that individuals doing this work don't get to the point of burnout and exit this field completely, which happens all too frequently.
Yeah. And I do want to promise the viewers, I did not pay Jason to say any of that stuff.
But, no, not at all.
But, obviously we have an authentic and genuine connection. And we're two of many people in this community that operate the same way and feel the same way. That's what makes it so great about being here. So luckily we got this grant, and Jason got this grant due to his vision and leadership. And that's what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about that project and what we're about to do to really make sure that we bring some workplace wellness to your DSPs. So I'm going to let you talk about it from your viewpoint, and I just want to mention that it isn't just Jason that's awesome. His whole team is awesome, and I think our teams have really bonded as a result of this initiative. And I think we had a very interesting a lunch discussion together, and you introduced those ideas to me, and we've hit the ground running. I think so. Tell us what we're doing.
Sure. Yeah, let me give some kudos to your team as well. I think the initial meeting that we all had together, both your team and my team, they were excited, but also a little skeptical and also unsure about how this was ultimately going to come to fruition. And to their credit, Gidget on your team and others, to their credit, I think we've been able to maybe just put the vision out there and let them pick up and run with it, which I think has been great. And that is, that's one of the great things about leadership is you get to help others arrive at the point where they're so invested in the work that they pick it up in their own. Yeah, I'm really excited about this project. It is specifically targeted to individuals working as DSPs in this profession. It's not just Wabash Center folks. It's available to any DSP in the region. And we do have a couple sister organizations that have expressed interest and or pledged to participate. And this is really doing a couple fundamental things. One is providing some baseline education to our employees about what are kind of the common mental health challenges experienced by individuals doing this work. And those tend to be anxiety, depression, some secondary trauma from having experienced working with individuals who have challenging behaviors on a routine and frequent basis. And then offering them a free mental health screening that really gets to the root of, are they themselves experiencing some signs and symptoms? And then probably most importantly, Brandi, is, your team will then pick up from there and allow our DSPs to access the Mental Health Navigator and other resources that are available to them in the local community to help address those underlying, often underdiagnosed or undertreated mental health challenges.
Yeah, and getting into workplace wellness has been kind of a goal of ours, just because we know that finally industries are beginning to view the people that are working for them as not just financial assets. They're looking at the whole person, and because of the labor shortage, they're more willing to invest in people. But what you're talking about is a company wide, where we are working on stigma reduction, mental health awareness. You are doing a very brave thing, which most brave leaders are willing to do, and that's get a census, get a survey out there, and get your finger on the pulse of how your employees are feeling. How are they feeling in their own life? How do they feel supported by the organization? And it's kind of scary sometimes to put that out there, because you don't know what you're going to get. But it's the only way that you can really solidify your policies and view what you're doing, and find different ways to improvise and to fully support people, because everybody's struggling to some point. We all know people that are struggling. It's no longer a 1 in 4 disease or disorder. Most studies are indicating that 50% of us will face a diagnosable mental health challenge. And we all know and love people who are also facing those challenges. So the really cool thing that I love about this project is it's not just, here, let's connect our people. It's, let's find out how they're really feeling. Let's educate them. They can opt in for this workshop that is going to be so specific to the work that they're doing and the challenges that they're facing. And then, as you said, plugging in that support, the navigation to get them where they need to be, the support groups, but also just plugging them in with peers. And peers are kind of Mental Health America's version of DSPs. So it's a beautiful symbiosis. And, these are folks that bring an incredible amount of lived experience. I once heard the saying, a pain shared is cut in half. And I think that this is the path for healing for a lot of industries, is to just be brave enough to find out how folks are feeling, and then offer them those supports and that education. And I give great kudos to you and your team for not only being willing to, but just driving this, because you know me, Jason. My intention is that we build something that's replicable, that this whole industry can benefit from, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so well put. I think that we're going into this with we have a hunch, right? We have a hunch that folks doing this work, it's an informed hunch, but it's a hunch that folks doing this work are experiencing some mental health challenges that are underdiagnosed or undertreated. And it is important from a total wellness perspective, one, as an organization, to acknowledge that, right? I mean, I think that's the first step, is to say, we believe this is happening, and then at the same time to offer a solution. And I think the great thing about this partnership is that this solution doesn't have to just come from us. People generally are skeptical, right, of the corporate wellness kind of approach, because they just wonder, well, what does that mean in regards to my personal information somehow being relayed back to my employer, and what are the implications of that? And one of the great things that you've helped to set up as part of this partnership is that, MHA is going to be the keeper of that, so that there is a very clear separation, and it really is focused on the individuals who need it most, right? And we get the benefit of some aggregate information, so we can test whether or not our hypothesis was correct and whether or not this intervention works. And to your point about, is this replicable? Yeah, obviously that is the goal. And I think that's one of the cool things about the way in which the state of Indiana has set up these, what they call innovation grants, is they want for these solutions to be something that can be brought up to scale across the state. And I really feel like this is one of those that we will be able to replicate it, and that this will provide value to the industry, and ultimately provide value to the people who need it the most, because we want them to be at their best. And you and I both know you can't be at your best when you're carrying other burdens other than what you have in front of you at work.
So true. And I love that you gave the state a shout out, because the state is really putting their money where their mouth is. And these grants are just one indication. Jason, I wanted to give you another chance, a last chance to say anything else that you would want any viewers to know about Wabash Center, the things that you're doing, this project, whatever. This is your minute.
Okay, I've already wasted 4 seconds being caught off guard, but no, I think I'm just going to take my time, and I appreciate this. I'm going to take my time, again, just championing the folks that do this work every day, whether that be individuals who are acting as direct support professionals in support of this population that we love and care about, or your peer coaches who are also doing very similar work. And I do think that you put it that it's a symbiosis. There's going to be great benefit to both parties in that. And I also want to take this time to encourage any of our DSPs or DSPs out there that are interested in this to participate. And then I'm going to end with a story. And that is, and I know that you have one of these too, Brandi, because we talked about this for a second before we jumped on here. But, this Wabash Center isn't the only place I've worked that supports people with disabilities. And before I came here, I worked for another organization down in Indianapolis. And we had a very, very, very complex case. This individual had significant challenges, and community options seemed very few and far between. And we worked really hard with him to get him to a good place. And then I came to Wabash Center and I fell out of contact with him. And I was down at the airport in April of this month for Disability Awareness Month. And they did an art show where people with disabilities who did some art got to display it at the airport for the entire month, which was really cool. So I'm down there with a few folks from Wabash Center, and this individual from my previous organization came up to me and was like, hey, and we used to have the secret handshake, and we did this little secret handshake. We hugged it out. And it was so great because he was out and about in the community just like anybody else, and was thriving in this environment. He ended up doing an interview for Wish TV down here, which was really cool. And we reconnected. I gave him my phone number. I'm like, hey, man, you got to call me, And I've talked to him probably 15 times since then. And to your point before we got on here, you just never know the kind of impact that you can have when you're doing this work. And that is one of the great rewards, is that you might never know. But sometimes you get a little window of insight into the difference that you make. And oftentimes that's enough, or it's enough to get you feeling again about the great work that you're doing. So.
Got great goosebumps with that story, Jason. I really appreciate everything that you and your staff and your team and the DSPs, the heroes of this program and this show. We love you. We see you. We look forward to working with you, and just putting it out there that Mental Health America Mental Health America Wabash Valley Region can do this for any industry. So reach out if you're interested. But don't forget, Wabash Center is serving some wonderful people, and some wonderful people are serving some wonderful people, and they have some wonderful people that are leading them through this. So thanks so much for being here, Jason, and hanging out with me. I look forward to being able to come back maybe next year and report out on our findings. Until then, everybody be kind and be good to each other.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandi. It was my pleasure.
We'll see you on the next episode of The Breakdown.